Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Now, this is a new series. This is the Triple IP, interesting interviews with interesting people, where I go about interviewing people that I find interesting in the football/football boot community. Now, my first guest is a former Adidas engineer, as well as now being a shoe/football boot repair artist. Enjoy. Today, I am here with my good friend, Ben. Ben, I always ask this on my podcast, but how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm going to use Matt Burns' response. Yeah, I'm doing great. Good, man. All good.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know, Ben, kind of give who you are, what you do, and yeah, what's going on.
So the answer I give is I try to encourage people to play sports for a long time.
Okay.
That's how I like to describe what I do. And that's been, whether that's through developing football boots to now repairing football boots and other sports shoes. We want to get people enjoying sports and doing it as sustainable as they can.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so let's kind of talk about the start, Ben. So like, where were you born? Where'd you grow up? How did you kind of get into football itself?
Yeah, man. So I was born in England, but I spent 11 years of my life in Scotland. So I moved at a formative age, hence my Andy Murray style accent.
I was gonna say you have a very thick accent.
Yeah, man, I still get hammered with it. But yeah, no, I moved up to Scotland, went to Strathclyde Uni, studied sports engineering, and that really came as a result of like I'd always loved football, and got into football boots because of like Predmania. So that was like the first shoe where I was like, I need to have, and I didn't have a pair because my feet were growing, and my parents were like, they're 120 pounds at the time, growing out in 5 minutes. But that was the one where I was like, I think I still know where I was stood when I was like 15, and I said, right, I want to work on football boots, or I would love to design Sedan's football boots.
Okay.
So that was kind of the start. I didn't do architecture. That was the other option because I said it would be too much of academia. And as we go through the story, you'll see why that's funny because I ended up doing, instead of 7 years, I ended up doing 9 years.
I would say I think you did more.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, man, went to Strathclyde, and they were one of the few places in Europe that do sports engineering. Which I always describe as like product design engineering, but with sports. So we did biomechanics, materials, kind of a bit of mechanical engineering thrown in and design. So that was the start.
Okay.
And then, that finished, and then was looking for what was next. And my mum actually spotted an advert for a PhD at Loughborough University which was sponsored by Adidas. So I ended up doing a PhD in footballs.
Okay.
That does exist.
Okay.
So studied, and it was kind of like player perception mixed with like the properties of a football.
Okay.
Which ruined watching football matches for me because I'd be listening to
bet.
the noise that a different ball made. Which is just like you don't think of it like. Right up until the point where I studied that topic, I was like, oh, it's a football.
Yeah. And
then I became a proper ball snob, would not play with anything which wasn't a match ball.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it was a wild ride. But yeah, I got to spend every year for 4 years, 3 months in Germany at the Adidas headquarters in Herzogenaurach. And that was kind of like the introduction to working full time at Addy.
Okay, cool. And then years later, you've left Addy, and now you have your own company where you're like, not redesigning, but you're fixing football boots and shoes with new materials or whatever people need, and then that's kind of where you go. Elongate the life.
Yeah, exactly. So after we did Addy, and we went to Vietnam for 1 year to work for one of the outsole suppliers, the guys who do this actual outsole.
Okay.
Different experience. I think we wanted to see real life. When I say real life, it's like the reality of football boot or shoe production. I'd seen it before through obviously team travel and stuff with Addy, but when you're out there living and breathing it, a bit of a different
Yeah.
reality. And then after some time, my wife and I said, okay, we want to do our own thing. We want to have a deeper focus on sustainability, not just a buzzword. We didn't want to answer to anyone for that, so we said,
Yeah.
right, we need to do it ourselves. But we didn't. Yeah, as I said with James and Andrew, like we didn't want to just do our own product. Like Sakita were doing a football boot. You got some other guys doing running shoes, and we said like there's so many shoes out there, so many. Like there's hundreds of millions every year. We don't need more. So let's fix the ones we have, and that was kind of where the dream of NUINO started.
Okay, cool. Now, before we continue, I got to ask, because NUINO is a company that you are in with your wife. Did your wife also study like sports, like engineering and biomechanics and stuff like that? Did she also work at Adidas, or was this just kind of like something you wanted to do and she wanted to do, and you were like, hey, let's just do this together?
So she'll openly say she had no intention of working in shoes.
Okay.
That was me.
Okay.
But she was like, I think I was already going down the route of sustainability, but she was researching and reading even more heavily. But she's coming more from like a business background, has done supply chain. But then we met in Germany at Adidas, so she was working there. We met, and then yeah, that was it. I think we both always wanted to do our own thing, and then we kind of merged the two kind of backgrounds, and yeah, that's where NUINO was born from.
No, that's awesome. And it's really, I found it interesting when you were kind of telling, the introduction, is that you kind of are at this point where with Adidas, or Adidas as you guys like to say it, that you were like almost on the outside looking in, like you could see the trenches. You weren't in the middle of the battle, but you could see the trenches. But you and then your wife decided like, hey, we want to be in those trenches.
Yeah.
And like we want to like work with it. And I think that's so cool, because I mean, especially in part of the US, it's kind of like the opposite. Like you're in the trenches forever and all you want to do is escape them. And you had the opposite idea where you're like, no, there's more work that needs to be done. Like, let's go lead, almost like, especially with NUINO, like a head first kind of like, we're going to make something that people can genuinely use, and like, without using the buzzword, like help save the environment and the earth and everything like that, which is awesome.
Yeah. And we honestly, like, we don't talk about it that much. Even with, we say shoe owners rather than consumers. But yeah, the shoe owners who come in with their favorite sports shoes, we rarely talk about it like outwardly. It usually comes up naturally from their side, where they say, yeah, well, I love this shoe, or it's super comfortable, I don't want to throw it away. So we definitely focus more in terms of our communication on just like people have that attachment to shoes, and it's weird. Like I can't explain it, but it's a very unique thing to shoes, I think. Like even though they're on your feet, when you pick up a shoe for the first time, you feel the materials. You get that connection. You have your moments with them, whether it's like you scored a goal in them, you played your best of a match. If it's football, you've ran a 5K PB, whatever it may be. But you do have those connections, and that's what we kind of communicate more with the people who come in.
No, that's awesome. Okay, so let's rewind the clock a little bit. Now, you told me at the start that you wanted to design Zidane's boots, and you held up the Predmania. For me, the first question I have to ask before we can continue this, what do you think is the greatest pred ever? All right, this can continue. That was the correct answer, and especially the Japan blue. Now, you said that you went from wanting to design boots, and then for a while you were studying and working with footballs themselves. What made you make that transition and then going back to shoes?
So the footwear was always the preference.
Okay.
I think it was like with the PhD, it was an opportunity, honestly.
Okay.
It was, yeah, I obviously had interest in footballs. There was like the Team Geist, even like going back to 2002. Everyone remembers the Scorpion Nike football as well.
Yes.
So there was always that kind of interest in footballs. But I think that definitely deepened it, doing the PhD and studying it. And understanding how they're made, all the materials involved. But like footwear was always the passion, as opposed to the footballs. That's why as soon as the opportunity came, I was like,
Yeah.
right, this is it. This is dream job, straight off the bat.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll be honest, like I'm kind of like everybody else where I never put too much stock or thought into a football until probably the Jabulani came out and the freakish nature of that boot. And then since then I'm like, I'm like only match balls. Like I may get a season or two ago's match ball, but like only match balls.
Yeah.
That's all and it's so funny too, because here in Texas, like we play with a lot of different people, especially men. I'm in a men's over 30 league. And anytime you bring out a match ball, it's so funny because so many of those guys will like feel it. And they're like, this is cheap plastic. I'm not playing with this. And you're like, brother, that's anything but cheap plastic.
Oh man, I always found the funny bit with footballs is the inflation pressure. If you inflate it to what's recommended, everyone's like, that ball's a rock.
You'll get a concussion.
Yeah, it's crazy. But then I don't know, you get used to it. Yeah, man, it's a funny. But now we're back to playing I play in a 7-a-side league here, which is they take quite seriously in Spain, and it's not a match ball. So I've had to like reset expectations.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, growing up we played with this ball called like a Mikasa ball, and it's this really cheap like Spanish company, but it's literally like a rock. So and we played like barefoot as kids. So yeah, you just get kind of built to it for a while, but then once you go to a match ball, it's night and day difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so you keep holding up the Predator Mania. So kind of talk to me about some of the boots that you worked on, some of the inspirations that you took from past boots that you love. You know, just kind of at the wheel right now. So just kind of talk to me about your love for boots.
Yeah, so I like from playing and growing up, like this was definitely the Mania was definitely the first love, but I think that and then when I started, I think my first pair of like expensive boots were the Mercurial Vapor 2s in burgundy.
The burgundy white.
Really, really wanted them. Was advised against them from my dad, and he was right to advise me against them because I wore them, I think, for 2 games. The blisters were so bad, you couldn't even play. I was like asking to be subbed because the blisters were so bad when I was 12 years old. Then got Pred Pulses, black, white, red, and also the black and red, like properly kind of blacked out with just a red tongue.
Yep.
I had a bunch of tunets because from the nerd or the engineer in me was like, yeah, they're cool. I thought they looked great. The idea was great. Yeah. Obviously, in hindsight, they fell apart. The threads on the studs. I think cost my parents some money. But yeah, I don't know, kept going between brands. It was always Nike and Adi. Growing up, at uni, I was wearing Vapor 4s in this lovely.
Oh, that colorway.
And this is the SL as well.
Oh,
Which my friend from Strathclyde who I was playing with, I had the regular version. He had these. These are his. He sent them to me when he saw that I started collecting boots. So this like kept me in it. The original lasers. I still have my pair from when I was like 16. Laser ones
crazy.
In the red colorway. So yeah, man, it's like jumped back and forward. Growing up, and then first boot I worked on at Adi was the Predator 20. So it was kind of the reintroduction of the rubber elements. Split tooling was back. So that was really cool working on. I look back at I have some old sketches and images of some of the prototypes, and it's crazy to think what happened with that boot came from some not very good sketches and some really sketchy material swatches, and then it's like transformed into the return of the rubber elements. So that was cool.
Okay. So let's talk about this. So I don't have the Mutator, right? But I've got the Freak. Okay. Yeah. So I've got the laceless version. Okay. You have the low and I've got the lace high. Okay. Yeah, everything covered. So with the Mutator, you said that you kind of worked on like designing sketches, everything. What was kind of the process? Like when you meet as a team, how does Adidas go, okay, we have the Ace, it's not really working. Then they had the Predator 18, the 19, which were by a lot of accounts, a lot of glorified aces. So how does the team come together and decide, like, we want to bring rubber back, we want to do this totally outlandish thing compared to what we're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, you've got like a fairly, it sounds like a small team, but when you like add everyone into the picture, it becomes massive. Yeah, you always have marketing, like your product managers, marketing guys, they kind of kick things off. You'll have design working on kind of inspiration, what's interesting. Development, or my role at the time was to try and find either technologies or yeah, materials which could be interesting for the boot. And then it kind of all comes together. You have a big kickoff, you all sit as a team. And yeah, and then from there you kind of work things out. Like I think some products, they're really defined very early on, and it's more a case of, all right, that's the vision. Like how do we execute it through materials and building a good shoe? Others, you have like a bunch of different ideas and concepts. Like on Ghosted, there were lots of different ideas. I was privileged to be a part of some of the kickoff trips even for that project, and yeah, and they change over time. Like with that one, it was a lot about transparency on the X Ghosted.
Okay, hence the upper,
So
the
hence
Mirage
the upper.
skin,
Yeah, exactly.
all that.
My
Okay.
big part on that was the tooling, and that came from, I think it was my boss at the time had met with Carbitex, the carbon supplier, and then it was kind of my role to work with design, the kind of biomechanics guys, to kind of work out what is the best integration of it and how can it make sense for a football boot.
Okay.
So I've got the speed flow rather than the ghosted in the
No,
what
yeah,
I think
yeah.
is the nicest colorway, or one of the nicest colorways. So it's working out like how does it make sense, where does it make sense, what is the angle that it should be optimally,
Okay.
combined with visuals. What's the stiffness that it's got to be? What's like a good amount of stiffness? When should this get stiffer? So yeah, like lots of like a big mix of integration, biomechanics and performance, design. So I've never been the designer. I'll sit with designers and sketch, but I'm a wannabe designer. So
No, that's cool. Yeah, it's really, really crazy to me and kind of astounding when you're talking about all the things that go into creating a football boot, because a lot of times we think it's just like, here's the sketch, these are the materials we got, like slap it together, it's good to go. And we're all like, I could design that. But then when you think of something, especially like the Ghosted, which was so it's almost like space like in a way, like it was
yeah,
very futuristic, very advanced. But when you talked about the Carbotech, so I have the Speed Portal, I don't have the Speed Flow or the Ghosted. Kind of run me through the ideas that you had using Carbotex, like why Carbotex? Because when you talked to Andrew and James over on the Football Boot Hour, you kind of talked about how I think that you have it designed in a way to where it gets stiffer as it goes one way, but it gets kind of more relaxed as it goes the other way. Like what goes into that? Like how do you, Ben, figure things out like that? And how do you go about that thought process to even do something like that?
So in that respect, like Carbitex had the technology, so they had their different kind of categories of product. One of which is you've got anisotropic. I'll go into these. Going to be the nerdy terms.
That's okay.
Anisotropic bending stiffness and non-linear bending stiffness. So that basically, in a fancy way, it means it'll bend in one way and not in the other. So it'll be softer in one direction, stiffer in the other direction. And then the other one is that the more you bend it, the stiffer it will become.
Oh.
So they have those technologies. So it was then a case of, okay, how does this make sense for what we're doing? So did it make sense to have one and not the other? And then you need to keep in mind that you're integrating it not by itself, but with other materials. So you have the plastic, which is, in this case, it's like injection molded onto the material. So then you need to think, how does that interact? Because they each have their own properties. So it's your Carbitex component is a composite. You're then adding plastic, so it's like a composite in a composite. So then you need to look at, okay, this is the effect we want from a bending behavior. How does that change when you add in the new material? So it gets really messy. and
Yeah.
complicated.
And gets very, I'm sure, like beyond technical.
Yeah, like, and don't get me wrong, the Carbitex guys super into it. The injection molding partner we had, they're super into the details of like melting temperatures of the materials and making sure it doesn't like get destroyed when you're attaching
When
materials
you're
to it.
creating
So
it.
it's, yeah, man, honestly, it was a lot of back and forth. Like some of it you try to calculate and try to predict. Other times you need to be like, right, send us 3 components. This is what we want. This is the profile of them. And then you try it and then give them to players and hope it works.
Okay.
A little bit, but
Okay, so I want to ask a question that has been kind of the subject of debate for many years now. The Ghosted, the Speedflow, and then the Speed Portal all had Carbitex. Can you in fact confirm that this is not just a sticker?
I can confirm to my knowledge that it is not a sticker.
There we go. You heard it first, people. Texas Cleat Collector exclusive. Okay, cool. So now a question that I have too with the Carbitex specifically was a big complaint that we heard with it, and then later on we even hear it with the Carvo in play played on the Alpha series from Mizuno, is that a lot of players don't like it. They say it's too stiff, blah blah blah, whatever. Now, some pro players we know also have a carbon fiber kind of like plate throughout their whole shoe. So would they get a carbon fiber plate on top of the Carbitex and that is what makes it too stiff? Or is it kind of a player by player basis? Like, how does that kind of work? Because you design something, I'm assuming, for the masses, and then pros get their customizations on top of it. So does that kind of sometimes throw your design and your intentions out the water?
So I think you always design for the masses with kind of pro player insights and feedback whenever you can. Like before even getting into the inserts, I think the bit I always go back to is how much of a role the upper plays. Like,
okay,
when you bend a shoe, the way the upper wraps around has a huge impact. And I know this because of a friend's PhD when he was looking at upper stiffness and the effect of this on the overall bending stiffness of the shoe. Plays a huge role.
Okay.
So I think when you go from like the Ghosted to the Speedflow, you had a boot which some people said, oh, it's too stiff, it's uncomfortable. Go to the Speedflow, all of a sudden the outsole wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
What's changed? The outsole stayed the same. It was only the upper. So that's one thing. The upper plays a huge role, and I know some of the guys in the group chat we talk about like how the upper needs to match and be kind of synchronized with the outsole as well. So that's number one. Yeah, the pro players, I think it's usually case by case. So like anything I've done hasn't been considering extra shank carbon inserts.
Okay.
So that would be anything extra is extra. Yeah, everyone's got their preference as well. You have some guys who I think would be quite happy with just like a really soft TPU outsole, and they just want to feel the ground, feel the studs bending. And then other guys like Gareth Bale, I think famously had like extra carbon inserts, and his calves were like golf balls.
Yes.
Playing. So everyone's got the preferences.
Yeah, and I'm sure stuff like that also comes down to like some of these players in their youth, because like my dad is from El Salvador, so like growing up, they always played barefoot. And so whenever he kind of got older and stuff, he likes like a really soft cheese sole plate, and then he likes a really soft buttery leather upper. Like he's probably like your dad, like when the Vapors came out. I remember my dad always did like the classic like bend the toe. Yeah. And then he'd feel the upper and he's like, nah, this is plastic. You don't want that. So we were never allowed to have anything like a Vapor. We always had Preds or Tiempos and stuff like that. Okay, so I want to move on to kind of one of your next projects that you worked on that I only bought because as us being friends, I kind of wanted to see something that you specifically worked on. And so I found a pair of the Adidas Strung. This is a really interesting boot in so many ways. Okay, so this is the first time where they got rid of the Carbitex. This was on that part of that gen. And to me, this was always like the Crazy Fast Plus, but you use the strung upper. So kind of walk me through how you guys made the transition from that crazy thin Crazy Fast Plus upper to a crazy thin upper made literally out of just like yarns
Yeah.
and strings flung every which way.
Yeah, man. So it was an interesting one. Like, I forget exactly how it all happened. There was a lot of different moving pieces at the time. Yeah, like strung as a technology, super interesting because it is literally like if you've seen any of the YouTube videos, it is literally like individual yarns being pulled
Yeah.
across a frame. So you can really design it from the ground up. And yeah, we had lots of different people involved. It was a big project. Like you had people specifically working on strung. You have designers. You had biomechanists. People putting in like for me, it was just like let's just make something which already exists, almost replicate that feeling, but with strung as like a proof of concept. So I was looking at all their 50s as a good example, and like what are the areas of the shoe where you want even differentiating between tensile stiffness. So tensile stiffness being if you pull something, how
Okay.
stiff is it versus bending stiffness. So even within that, we were trying to differentiate like what parts of the shoe do you want it to be like high tensile stiffness versus soft in bending, and yeah, really engineering each part of it. Testing it for football. At that point, it had only been, I think, only had been used for like one running shoe or even
Yeah.
like a trial shoe. That was probably that was one of the biggest challenges, honestly. Like using the right yarns to make sure it doesn't just end up like a big brown muddy mess. So that was a huge challenge.
Okay. So when you're like, for me, when you talked with James and Andrew, you guys talked about, and we'll get to it in a minute, the F50 Plus being kind of this Halo product. For me, something like this is the epitome of a Halo product because I thought it was so cool. Literally, like we were talking about how you took, and in my mind, that's what you did, and then you just said it too. But you took the Crazy Fast Plus and said, okay, all I want to do is change this one technology to make it something special. And I think that you accomplished it really well with the strung. It's just such a really weird feeling boot.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those. I'm glad you brought up the F50s too, the older F50s, because it reminds me of those in some ways where it's kind of rigid and almost plasticky, but.
Yeah.
It kind of is also a boot that I've never felt anything like it on my feet. And even with the strung, you know, like J Mike talks about it, and you can kind of see it like when I turn the light, like it's see through, but there's like little holes. So in Texas, like in the summer, this is fantastic because my feet can breathe. So with something like that, do you think about kind of like, because I feel like only a few players wore this like on a professional level, right? Do you worry about things like the holes or the material holding up in that kind of wet environment? Because like, you know, famously Nike had the Superfly 1 and it literally just kept exploding. It was so crazy rigid. So what kind of goes into your thought process is like, hey, X person is going to wear these. I need to make sure that they hold up and kind of withstand the perfect European pitches.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to find, there's a lot of test standards in place. So in a way, it's made easy where, you know, it needs to withstand certain, the material itself needs to withstand certain, forces without breaking. So that's kind of your approach. Building uppers, testing the uppers before it's even on as a full shoe.
Okay.
But then, yeah, as you said, it's even with that material, because of the way it's made, when you then last it and make a shoe, it does then soften up. The more you wear it, it gets softer as well. But it's, like there was a lot of testing done on that shoe.
Okay.
Lots of different rounds. I forget how many, but lots of different, like we called them recipes. So lots of different recipes of strung to get to that point.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Now let's move on to its kind of younger brother, the F50 Plus. Now this is a boot that you have famously talked about. You talked about with James and Andrew. So kind of again, when we come into the F50 and I watched the Unisport behind the scenes kind of thing, and literally the original design is like a speed flow with like shaved studs, a giant clump of foam, and then like a kind of a hodgepodge like second sole plate. So kind of walk me through like what you did, because I know you were part of the innovation team. So how do you guys come together, and like what does a meeting look like that when you're deciding to go work on a Halo product like the F50 Plus?
I mean, that was quite a special one because we were very directly briefed from quite, I'd say, high level to go and work on it. And it was like with innovation, you can go both ways. You can either say, right, this is the feeling we want to achieve, or this is the performance. In this case, it was much more like, well, we're doing this in our running team. Why can't it work for football? Um, and the first answer I think most people gave was, you want to be close to the ground. This makes no sense. Why are we doing it? There was a lot of kind of apprehension around doing it, but then it's like, okay, we're doing this. It's going to happen. Like we need to work
Okay.
out how does this make sense. So I think, yeah, Harry, who was in that video, the Unisport video, spent a lot of time with him. And then, yeah, Hannes from a marketing side, we were sketching stuff on whiteboards, looking at biomechanical research, like working out how on earth can this make sense. And yeah, and as I said, it's like it needs to play. You need to play football in it as well. It's not just about running. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
insights we looked at were about running, but like the reason that that foam doesn't extend right the way to the toe, for example, is because we know you need to kick a football. You need to get under a
Hmm.
ball. So yeah, it was a lot of back and forth with all of those prototypes. Some were yeah very very crude, and then the further we got towards the end, then we could open molds, have kind of real pieces on hand, and yeah, it got there in the end. But again, lots of testing, lots of I don't want to say sleepless nights, but it was going in that direction.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, so you guys use the Light Strike Pro foam in the
Yeah.
pods on the F50. What makes you, because you're like a crazy scientist meets football engineer for me, like in my head, so you know all this stuff that's like levels above anything I could ever come up with. But what makes you choose something like Light Strike Pro over Light Strike or Boost, which
Yeah.
is still really popular? Like, how do you go about picking that specific foam?
Yeah, like at the time, like Light Strike Pro was the top performing material within Adidas. So that was the that was like the initial reason why we tried it. It's very lightweight. We didn't want to. We were conscious of adding weight to a shoe by adding more material.
Uh huh.
Like if you go back to I think it was the Pure Control 17 Plus, you had like a Boost insole and a Boost insert.
Yeah.
It adds weight. It was an eTPU, so higher density. Whereas with the Light Strike Pro, much lighter. Um, and then I think it was just a bit of back and forth. We did try different foams, but a big part of the concept was more around the plates and the way the plates added stiffness when you bend it, and the foam was almost like filling that space to start
Okay.
with. And then we found through testing it also offers a really good energy return, so it gets those plates back to their original position faster as well. So it was yeah a bit of it makes sense because it's our highest performing foams, and then on top of that it's lightweight and it then works when we started to do the testing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I did a review. It was like one of my early ones. It's terrible, but I did a review of the F50 Plus, and it was one of the most unique feeling boots I've ever worn. Like I said, it's one of those like as a heel when I run, I have like probably terrible biomechanics, but I heel strike like horrible. Like my heels absolutely hate me after every game. But that was one of the first boots where I was like, wow, this is like what when you're a kid and your coach is like, get on your toes, get on your toes. Like that's what the F50 Plus made me want to do. Like I constantly kind of like you talk about like this rocker motion and you can see it.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, the boot is like bent like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but it makes you kind of want to lean forward and go on your toes. So something like that, is that something you're very cognizant of during the kind of design process? Because I think you said his name's Harry, but he was showing the spike track shoe and like literally the heel is like it looks
Yeah.
almost like it's a stiletto but it's missing the high heel.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're conscious of it in both ways. It's like number one, we don't want people to wear this and have that kind of Achilles pressure and feel like they're sat back into the heel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was a bit of going backwards and forwards. We were speaking to doctors about it even to make sure this doesn't create problems because we didn't want to cause any issues by having it. But then, as you say, I think when you're on a football pitch anyway, and you actually start to put pressure onto that forefoot, I think you naturally want to rock onto your toes anyway. So we found that we don't want to hurt people. We want to be on your toes anyway. And ultimately, apart from when you're planting your feet for kicking, like most of the time playing football, you're on your toes anyway. And I think we found it wasn't much of an issue.
Okay, cool. And so, I mean, infamously, it came out laceless and had a couple of colorways that were laceless. And then they kind of did this like version 2 in that purple, almost chameleon light colorway where they switched the upper a little bit. They went back to laces. Was the version 2, I don't want to say more aligned. Was it closer to what you and your team's original vision for this boot was before it goes to marketing and all that? Or was it still kind of a ways off?
I would say, in a word, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think like all of our testing up until right up until the end was always with a laced shoe.
Okay.
I think we might have made some prototypes laceless, but I think we said we wanted to properly evaluate the outsole and not be affected by the upper.
Okay.
So for us, it was I think we're using see the Speed Portal uppers at the time. I think in the video you can see them, and then eventually when the core team who were working on the regular F50, which was completely new, when their uppers were like progressing and becoming better and better, then we could kind of cross pollinate and test with the elite laced version.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because it makes me sad too that like that's the version 2 has only had one colorway so far.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen or heard much about it. But yeah, great. I mean, great work. Like it's super cool. Like I get kind of like the nerd in me is like when I see that F50 plus, I'm like, this is such a different, like cool thing. Like it didn't work for me personally and my feet, but yeah, such a cool boot. Like
we tried something.
Golf clap. No, it's cool. I like that. Like I like kind of the whole like let's just throw stuff at the wall and kind of see what sticks in a good, like, you know, a cohesive way. I don't want like this terrible thing. Okay, Ben, so I want to move on to a boot that your research and kind of engineering to help design and come back, right? And that is the Pred 24 FT. Okay, so kind of walk me through what parts of this boot specifically you kind of worked on and helped work on.
Yeah, like the main thing we worked on there was the SL rubber and the placement and some of the ideas. Exactly, so the rubber elements in the forefoot, as well as some of the geometries of the studs, actually. The designer I was working with, he's amazing designer. He's still going strong in the innovation team. But yeah, like we worked on a whole concept, which is not to be seen. Hopefully one day I can show it. Yeah, it's some pretty wild concepts, looking at the rubber, the direction of the rubber, how it's integrated, some different ideas around it, which I still think are really neat. And then the other part was the studs. So yeah, I think like the main thing which I think brought that shoe to life on the 24 was for sure the rubber elements. I think that's the kind of iconic. Like you having that and then me having this, you can see.
Yes, literally.
There we go.
It's big brother, little brother, like straight up.
Like that. So yeah, I think like, don't get me wrong, the inline guys did an unreal job making it like the iconic shoe that it is now. Because I think it's one thing we worked on the elements, but the shoe looked like, from what we worked on to final product, looks night and day.
Really?
So it was really nice to see, I think in a positive way, like we handed over or worked with the team on like, this is what we've worked on, here's the innovations, this is what was good, this is what was not so good.
Okay.
And then they take that and elevate it, do the kind of refinement, and make it a finished product.
Okay. So like when you're working on specifically like kind of the striking elements on the 24, and then it kind of goes to like that midlife, you know, Adidas kind of does that 2 gen before they really kind of change things with the 25. Do you also work on like how the elements look, the placement of that as well on the 25? Or do you take the 24 and then somebody kind of tweaks it and that's kind of how they get to the 25?
Yeah, exactly, the latter. So we work, like typically we were working in like those 2-year segments. So always working on you'd call it a TN, like a totally new product.
Okay.
So 24, you're 26. We'd work on those. There might be some times where we work on something which maybe feeds in to the 25. We've got
Okay.
ambulance going past. That's fun. Um,
Hopefully it's not for you
yeah,
guys.
we're all safe, all good. But no, there might be some times where you work on something which it doesn't make it into the 24, but there's something interesting which then, maybe filters its way into the 25. Like I think that's happened from time to time.
Okay.
Because you generate a lot of, let's say, content in a way, a lot of samples, which then designers can look at, and like it happens a lot. Designers will see something and they'll take inspiration, and then it'll go from there and completely transform to the final product.
Okay. Interesting. And then also to kind of cap off, I think one of the last products that you worked on was you worked on the 26, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And then you also worked on the striking elements. Okay,
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
go from a very, very aggressive SL rubber striking element on the 24, which is very Mania-esque. And then you kind of go for, I think it was Josh that first called them like the back of a toothbrush nubs on the 26. Now, for me, the 24 is very Mania inspired. The 26 is very Absolute inspired. And so with the 26, and maybe precision too, just aesthetics. But with the kind of the rubber element, it's very, I don't want to say understated, but I think it's also crazy to me how you go from big, chunky, crazy aggressive rubber to like this softer, nubby rubber. But I think I actually, when it, in terms of the rubber element itself, I really like the 26. I have a lot of gripes and complaints with the boot as a whole, but kind of walk me through your process, how you go from, again, big, crazy, chunky ones on the 24 to like the soft nubs on the 26.
Yeah, well, I remember even it was quite early on. I think even when we were still working on the 24th, someone from the engineering team had found some material which had that kind of hairy texture to it. And just I think because of timing, we said, well, 24 is now, kind of time's up, but let's already start looking at this for the next big one. And I think it made a lot of sense. Like we saw some good results. I think you've seen videos from the Adidas testing hall or the sports science hall. They have a literal kicking robot.
Yeah.
Where you can put either football boots on it or material swatches on it, and test them and compare. We saw some good results from those initial swatches, and I think we just said, well, it makes a lot of sense. Like for what we've described as the modern predator player. I think in the past we've talked about like Zidane's, your Beckham's, that type of player. It was much more about, like in Beckham's sense, it was a lot of set pieces. And then we said, like, who are the modern predator players as well? And there was a lot of talk around who are those players, what are the types of movements that those players are doing, what are the types of kicks those players are doing. And I think we said more and more that there's more dribbling going on. You're running at higher speeds with the ball. The types of kick you're doing, they're more nuanced and they're kind of those like more delicate kicks. So when you talk about those types of things, and then what control is, and for me, Predator it's a control boot. I know that Ace talked about control as well, but for me, control is the kind of umbrella term. And for me, it's then, okay, how do you control the ball the best? And not me personally, but as a team, we talked about the term control. And we said, well, if you can have the same amount of friction or grip, but be closer to the ball. So if you can feel the ball better, be closer to the ball, so physically less space between the ball and your foot, that for me kind of automatically equals more control. Providing you're a good footballer, you want to have better control over the ball by better proprioception, better feel. So that's why we said closer to the ball with the grip elements, but hopefully the same amount of friction in wet and dry conditions. So that's kind of where that came from.
No, that's awesome, because I mean it is very, I don't want to say it's night and day. Like you can see kind of, as Matt always famously says, the design language that goes into it. But I mean, again, like you said, when you have the boots on feet and you're kicking, like the 24, it's its own kind of unique beast, especially with like how it's gritting. Like it almost reminds me of, not to the same extent, but the Laser 3, and just what a freakishly like monster of a striking boot that is. To the 26, which, like you said, it's a little bit more, it's subdued, but it's like a controlled kind of beast. It's not
Yeah.
just like this wild, untamed thing.
Yeah,
Very cool. And
exactly.
so I think that was maybe the last boot that you kind of worked on at your time at Adidas. Maybe you have more coming that you can't say.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, that was the last thing which I'd seen the direction, like the general
Okay.
direction of. So we'll see
Okay.
what comes after and whether I'm like, yeah, touch this
Okay,
or not.
cool. Okay, so I want to finish off on your current project, NUINO.
Yeah,
We kind of talked about it. We kind of talked about what it's doing. Now, famously, you worked on our friend James, the boot wizard. He had a absolutely battered pair of Nike Phantom Venoms. And you like not only brought them back to life, but you've totally changed the like what did you use? A mushroom leather?
yeah. So yeah, we worked on that shoe. We had knowing James as well. So this was kind of cool. Like my wife and I are vegetarian, bordering on fully plant based. And then we found that supplier even when I was still in Vietnam. And they're just interesting what they do. They do leather products, but they also then work on this mushroom cellulose, fully biodegradable product. So then working with James on it, we could give him a completely unique personal shoe. It was a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but
Oh yeah.
that's I think what we want to do. We want to always give personal solutions as well to what we're doing.
Okay. And so with NUINO, I'm assuming kind of it's mainly you and your wife as of now. Do you
Yeah.
guys plan to kind of grow it more full scale to where you could be taking in products like crazy, or do you want to kind of keep it smaller, very intimate to where you're like, brother, I'm staying up handcrafting, like my hands are torn up. But is that kind of the direction that you want to go with the company?
I think we talk about it a lot between the two of us, like how we want it to progress, and like because we got into it because we want to have we want to challenge consumption or
Yeah.
human consumption habits. Like that was a big thing for us. So yeah, I think we're doing it on a small scale now. Like I'd never repaired a shoe until we started, right? So
Yeah.
we're learning all of this ourselves. A lot of YouTube, trying to take what we know from shoe construction from the time in Addy. From knowing what materials to use, knowing how painfully complex gluing shoes together is. I think everyone takes it for granted, but it's a proper chemistry. So yeah, like we're doing small now, but we're always looking at like how can things progress in one way or another. So we've got, I think between the two of us, we've got a lot of big ideas. So I think it's trying to pick kind of direction we want to go in and what makes sense as well.
No, that's awesome. So before I let you go, because you've got things to do, I've got things to do. I want to know what your plans, kind of broad scale, are for 2026. Because it's like almost February by the time we record this.
Yeah.
So what are you planning for this year? What's in store for Ben and NUINO 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think just keep growing, progressing, building awareness for NUINO and for repair in general. Like with sustainability, everyone talks about recycle, 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 and we are saying, well, before you do that, repair.
Yeah.
So which sounds crazy, but yeah, you can repair stuff. So yeah, I think that's one thing, just building out awareness. We've got a few projects kind of in the works between whether it's working with some smaller brands on can we to repair specifically their shoes with some of the components. Got some a bit more abstract stuff, which is very, very early in the works, so I'm not going to mention it yet. That'll be for another one.
Yeah.
And then some which are even much bigger scale. So we've got a big mix of stuff. I think our biggest challenge is like picking stuff or picking one thing to go with at a time.
Yeah.
But no, we're excited. It's we're 5 months into the project since opening last September. So
Heck yeah.
Lots more to come.
Perfect. All right, Ben, tell the people where they can find you.
So me personally, I think I'm Benjamin Thompsett on Instagram, and then on LinkedIn we're NUINO. We're NUINO.official on Instagram, and we also are at NUINO.es is our website. So hit us up on that, and everything is repairable is probably the final note. So any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, guys, send Ben a DM. He's super nice. He's super friendly, I promise. I talk to him all the time. Ben, I just want to take a second and say thank you so much for coming. This has been an honor and a pleasure to speak to you and for you to tell everybody kind of about your story.
Oh man, thanks for having me. Been a pleasure. Good to actually talk. And,
for sure, for
somehow
sure.
in person. That's been lovely.
Yeah, semi in person, right over the internet.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I will let you go, but I want to say thank you again. Until the next episode, guys. Peace. And that is it for episode 1 of Triple IP. I'd like to thank my guest Ben for not only being my first guest, but also taking the time out of his day to talk to me when I know there's probably a million other things he'd rather be doing. I will leave all of Ben's links as well as NUINO's in the description. And go down in the comments. Let me know. What do you think? Did you find this interview interesting? Do you want me to keep this series going? If so, who should I try to interview? Let me know. And until the next episode, guys. Peace.